One of the hottest topics for independent artists is how do I make the most money from my music? And there are so many revenue streams for artists out there today. And the thing is, most artists aren't tapping into all of them. So, on today's episode, we're going to be discussing all the revenue streams for your music. And I'm sure there's plenty you're missing. So, let's get into it.
You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Welcome to episode number 302 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner. Joining me is Chris Robley. And today we're going to be talking about all the revenue streams for your music. And we've got quite a list, Chris. It's going to be a good one.
When we say all, we're not lying.
Yeah. We came up with 31, I think is what the total was. And we probably missed some as well. But I think that's going to be a great discussion. Artists are always asking about monetizing their music. And you got to think about all the methods to get revenue rolling for your music. And we're going to deep dive it today. Chris, before that, I'm not in my usual location. I'm actually in Nashville in a hotel room.
And for those watching on YouTube, let me see. I can show my phone. This is Kevin's setup here in his hotel room. He's got some janky little stand for his.
I've got the bench seat with the side table, with the trash can, with a shirt to dampen behind the microphone, and then my laptop. You got to DIY it, man. You got to get creative and make things happen.
And I can also tell your voice is a little hoarse, probably because you were singing "Don't Stop Believing" like 5 times last night on Broadway.
Well, talking at loud events, I've been at networking events and meetings and then some shows. So yeah, my voice is a little strained. I have not heard "Don't Stop Believing" yet.
Wow.
Last night was the first time I went to Broadway, and however, I did meet up with some other CD Baby folks, and this was their first time in Nashville. I asked them if they had heard "Don't Stop Believing" yet, and they said they heard it on their way over to that venue. So it's out there. It's in circulation. I just haven't hit it yet. Hopefully tonight. But I did have an amazing musical experience last night, Chris. We went to this American Legion, which is like, I looked it up on the Wikipedia, and I don't even know how to describe it, but basically they're like community centers, like old school community centers. That's what I'll call it, because basically they were a connecting point for people. Like there's the VFWs and things like that. They were typically geared around veterans, but it was like a community hub for them. But this was like 10 minutes north of Nashville, outside of town, and it was the Honky Tonk Tuesday, and it was all locals who just love it. The band sounded amazing. It was like the real deal. My cell phones did not work there. There was like no coverage. So it really felt like stepping back in time. It was amazing. I loved every second of it.
And how did you wind up in such a strange place?
I think it was John, or no, it was Sarge here at CD Baby was like, you need to go get this experience. And it was worth it. It was really,
you used
really,
to live
really
in Nashville, so that's it's nice that there's still tourist experience, or actually I should say not tourist experiences, local experiences for you to get.
Yes, that's what was cool about it, because when you come to Nashville now, it feels like they're trying to become Vegas more and more every day. And even from when we had the conference at downtown Nashville, it's night and day what's happened in just that short amount of time. And so when the music culture just becomes a touristy gimmick, you start to wonder, where is the essence of it? Where are the roots of it? And that's what I felt like I experienced last night. People who were there just for the love of honky tonk and dancing. And it was great.
Fun. Well, I wish I was there, but some other, not just for the honky tonk, but for music biz, of course.
Yeah, it's been a good conference. I had lots of good meetings so far, more on tap for the rest of the week. And so I'm recording from Nashville because we got to keep the podcast rolling. We're committed. We're going to do this every week unless we need a break. But so we're here, and this is the first time using this microphone, so I'm hoping it's sounding all right. But yeah, I think this is going to be a great episode. Before we get into that, if you're listening to the podcast on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and hit the notification icon as well so you don't miss any episode. We're dropping lots of content, not just podcasts on YouTube. And if you're listening in Apple Podcast or Spotify, make sure you're subscribed as well. Our last episode was about cover songs. Got some great feedback about that. If you've got a song you want to distribute, head on over to CD Baby. We'll take care of you. And most of the monetization stuff, a good portion of it, the stuff that we handle on your behalf, because some of this that we're going to talk about today is not in the distribution world, but we will ensure your musical assets are fully monetized and get out worldwide, from social monetization, which includes YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, to sync licensing, to publishing, to just monetizing your sound recordings. We do all of it. So just head over to cdbaby.com. And if you've got a cover song, because that's what we talked about in the last episode, it's super easy to drop a cover song and start building that audience. So head over there and make it happen.
And don't do Hallelujah.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that
Should we have our engineers put a filter in, like it scans every track, and if it's Hallelujah, it gets
Yeah.
rejected.
Sonic fingerprinting for Hallelujah.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris says you're
Sorry.
not allowed. And we would like to help you out, but Chris doesn't want you to do Hallelujah, so we can't do it. All right. Making money from music has always been a hot topic for artists in their career. I think even going back to my early days of starting to play, it was, how am I going to make a living from my music? I mean, that's always been a major theme. We've talked about it over and over on the podcast, that we've all had those people in our lives saying, like, when are you going to get a real job? And when are you going to go make some money? And so the idea of monetizing music, making money from a music career, is always a hot topic. And Chris, we were looking at the notes for today, and you put together a list of 31 different ways to monetize music. That's a big list. So we've got a list of 31 ways to monetize music. And Chris, do you just want to dive into that list and we'll discuss, and we're going to like
Yeah.
tag team it? It's
And
a big list.
I'll try to go quick because it is a long list.
Okay.
All right. So here are 31 ways to make money from your music. First, streaming revenue from your sound recordings, download revenue from your sound recordings, mechanical royalties for streaming, mechanical royalties for physical manufacturing, mechanical royalties for downloads. Then we get into performance royalties. There's performance royalties for digital plays, performance royalties for radio plays. There's performance royalties when your songs get played on TV shows. There's even performance royalties when you play your music at live gigs or it's broadcast in a public space, like on the radio, in a restaurant, something like that. Then there is social video monetization revenue for your music when it gets used on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Triller, Snapchat. There's YouTube Content ID, which is a specific form of social video monetization. There's revenue from YouTube's partner program. Then we get into physical media. You can make money from selling physical media at gigs via physical distribution, selling CDs through e-commerce on your own website, or even just on consignment, a local record store. And that could be for CDs, vinyl, cassettes, any kind of physical media. Then there's non-interactive digital royalties. That's something like neighboring rights or sound exchange royalties for when your sound recordings get played in a non-interactive way. That money can go to the label, the artist, and the session players. There's also getting paid fees for doing session work. If you're a great instrumentalist and you go into a studio, record on someone else's stuff, you should get a fee. Same thing goes for fees you would get paid for doing production, mixing, arrangement, or mastering work. And those could either be upfront fees or getting points if you're a producer, which is sort of a residual kind of royalty. And then Kevin's going to take it from here.
All right, we've got live performance revenue from ticket sales, the door, the bar. We've got sync licensing for sound recording, the money you get for licensing your recorded track. We've got sync licensing for the publishing side, if it's your song that gets placed in film or TV. We've got licensing beats, giving people permission to use your beats. We've got merch sales at shows and online. We have memberships, subscriptions, things like Patreon or Bandcamp has that option. And so does Bandzoogle. You can have subscriptions for your fans. Crowdfunding. We all are familiar with crowdfunding. That is a revenue stream for your music. There's live stream tipping like Facebook stars, Twitch. YouTube just launched something similar just last week. NFTs and other crypto music income. That's a lot of people talking about that right now. Got sponsorship or endorsement deals or brand deals. We've got forms of tipping, server boosts on Discord, tips on Spotify, and other places like that using PayPal. Teaching lessons, whether in person or online. We've got VIP experiences, getting those diehard fans to pay for more, whether it's at a show or something they get online or buy from your website. We've got selling courses, getting that passive income by putting together the knowledge you know about music and making it available for others to buy. And number 31, freelancing your marketing or design skills, all those things that you've learned, marketing your music, the things that you've done, other artists want to know about it, and you can help them out and make money from it as well. And that was 31 items, Chris. There's a lot in there.
There's a lot, and we probably missed a few. Even I was thinking of like sheet music sales. I know that's probably a much rarer thing these days, but I'm sure someone's gonna be like, "You missed like 15 things."
Well, hey,
let us know.
Yeah, if we missed something, let us know. You can call our listener line 360-524-2209 or email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. So you guys missed this, or if there's a revenue stream that we did call out that's become significant money for you, let us know. Let us know. And this reminds me somewhat of the episode number 299 with Adam Ezra and just some of the things that he was doing from his website. I think what's so important about this list, and as you're reading it, Chris, especially the top things, I bet people were like, well, streaming revenue, sure, download revenue, those are all really the same thing. No, they're not. Or the mechanical royalties from each thing. The way music is used now has become so fractured that if you're not aware of what each of these revenue streams are and how they independently can be exploited, you might be missing revenue. Like downloads from recordings. I could see somebody go, oh, sure, but I distributed my music worldwide. But are you selling downloads to your diehard fans from your website? No. Well, you're missing a revenue source because you can create a different, unique download experience that's more than just getting the track when you do it from your website.
Well, and something like publishing royalties too is an area where if you live in the United States and you're affiliated with, let's say, ASCAP or BMI, you might assume you're collecting all your publishing royalties. And we hear this all the time when we start talking about all the different kinds of ways to generate mechanical royalties, which is a kind of publishing royalty. People are like, oh, I'm good. I'm signed up with ASCAP. No, you're not. I mean, ASCAP does great work, but they don't collect those particular kinds of royalties for you. So I think it's worth breaking down every single kind of revenue and then also breaking it into all the sources where it's coming from, just to make sure you're checking everything off the list.
Yeah. You've got 7 sort of groups that you put together.
Yeah, and we can sort of ramble our way through these, but I guess that the first one, and maybe the most obvious thing people think of, at least in terms of distribution, is monetizing the sound recording. So that is just the master recording, and that would be owned by you, the independent artist, or maybe an indie label, or a major label. But anyways, if you've made a recording, you put it out there in the world, it can be generating a kind of the bulk of streaming revenue. I think it's 50 something percent that goes to the sound recording owner. Similar percentages for downloads. The bulk of that gets paid to the sound recording. What am I missing in talking about that? Oh, clearly, if you're selling physical, if you're manufacturing physical stuff, the sound recording owner gets a bulk of that as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, as far as independent artists are concerned, we wear so many hats oftentimes that we don't even know, because the average artist, especially if you're writing original music, they are the sound recording owner, which in the mainstream music business world, that would be the label most often. And then often you're the songwriter and you own those songs. So you're the songwriter and you're the publisher. And so there's all these things, that monetization options and rights that go along with each of those hats, or rights that you own and can exploit. And it just starts by peeling things apart and understanding that, like, the sound recording you're talking about is very different than the song, and the sound recording can have lots of options. If you just think about what life can the sound recording live that I can monetize and exploit, whether it's my track or a cover song, but just understanding that there's all these different rights inherent that also point to different monetization options.
Yeah, well, I remember in a previous episode when we talked about Spotify's payment model in depth, I made kind of a joke saying, like, I don't give a damn who wins the fight between the publishers and the sound recording because I'm both of them. And I was reminded of that because for anyone who's listening and like, oh gosh, do I need to keep track of all these little things? Because you said we wear many hats. Kind of the short answer is not really. If you own your sound recording and if you wrote the songs and you use CD Baby for distribution and all of these other things, like there's a lot of check boxes. So when you sign up for distribution, make sure you're also opting in for our free social video monetization and sync licensing stuff, because basically that takes care of all of it for you. And then you don't have to stress so much about this, but it gets more complicated if, yeah, multiple parties are splitting the rights and stuff like that. But just wanted to say that up front in case anyone's really stressing about homework in this episode.
Yeah. I think the main takeaway I hope that you get from this episode of the podcast is that first off, that you have fully monetized all the things, especially on the distribution side. We see so many artists that they get in a rush. They go, I just need to get this distributed to Spotify and Apple right now. I'll come back and deal with the rest. And then they don't. And they're missing out on YouTube money, which is growing like crazy. It's still growing like crazy. Things like Facebook are starting to pay out, and TikTok monetization coming online. All those things that if you miss it, you miss it. So just go back and make sure you're fully monetized. And on the publishing front, we take care of that for you as well. And a lot of artists think, oh, I've already, like you mentioned, ASCAP. I've signed up with ASCAP. I'm good. It's like, no, these things are all different. And you need to make sure that you're fully monetized. The other thing that I hope people take away is that there's so much opportunity to get creative, that you have so many selling tools and opportunities. If you think about these things, stop thinking about music revenue as it all depends on whatever Spotify's doing. That's what artists have been so fixated on Spotify money that instead of constantly complaining about that, go put that energy to getting creative to drive real dollars. It makes a huge difference. So
That's what I liked so much about that Adam Ezra episode is the bulk of his money is coming from him driving the revenue himself on his website, and not even necessarily for download sales or anything. It's all these kind of extra experiences and just cool stuff that feels personal that he's using to drive all that. You mentioned publishing, which is sort of the second big bucket of revenue, and I just wanted to define that real quickly as publishing is just the business of helping songwriters make money from their songs as opposed to specific recordings of a song. So it's like the underlying musical composition. And for CD Baby, we help you collect all that stuff through what's called CD Baby Pro Publishing. It's just a publishing administration deal that kind of sits on top of our distribution. And if you opt in for that, then we help you collect all the various publishing things we will now talk about. But that can include performance royalties, which is a royalty you're owed for writing a song that gets broadcast in public, on the radio, performed in a venue, as well as mechanical royalties, which is a publishing royalty that's generated when something is reproduced either on physical media or now in the digital age, like reproduced digitally.
yeah. And there's a few things that artists really need to understand here. First one is that your publishing company that you created and listed with your PRO is not a publishing company. A publishing company has
Unless you put
staff.
the word vanity before it.
Yeah. A real publishing company has staff, has relationships with global collection societies to make money flow to you. So listing what they call it vanity, meaning exactly what it is. You just have that to have your own name on it. Your PRO may collect some money and pay the publishing portion to that, but you're missing so much more. And now more than ever, there's so much publishing money, especially for independent artists coming online worldwide. And with our CD Baby Pro program, we go out and we have direct relationships with those collection societies around the world. And we get those payments directly. So they're not filtering through 3 or 4 different PROs to make their way back to you. And everybody takes a little piece of the pie on the way. It's turning into real money. And that's important But the other thing that's important as far as monetization is concerned is that so many organizations now, whether it be apps or video games or even places like Amazon Music was doing this for a while, that they come to somebody like us and they just want the catalog that is pre-cleared, meaning we can represent the publishing and the sound recording. So they know that the music that's in their game, their platform, or their app is going to be conflict free. There's not going to be anybody coming saying, "Hey, they don't own the rights to that."
And those
Uh,
rights can be licensed almost
yes,
instantaneously because it's just a
yes,
one stop.
yes. So they can license a giant piece of catalog that goes in their app or video game or whatever their new music platform, and they know that the music that we have that we represent for CD Baby Pro, we can represent those rights, and so it opens up more opportunities to get into new things first, because these platforms, many of them have learned hard lessons about using music and only understanding the sound recording side of it, thinking, oh, I just got the label's permission, not knowing that the label had no rights to any of the songs that that famous artist did, and they get
Mhm.
in trouble. And so they come to us knowing that, hey, the publishing's cleared, the sound recording's cleared, we can use all these tracks in our game, and it's a great opportunity for the artist. It makes them money, gets them exposure. And so that's another thing with the publishing piece that's important to understand. It's not just about collecting money that might be out there, it's about fast tracking you on new opportunities.
Yeah, and then just the mechanics of collecting this stuff. So your performance royalties side of publishing will come to you through a performing rights organization such as ASCAP or BMI in the US. But if you're working with CD Baby Pro Publishing, we'll do all that paperwork for you to make sure you're affiliated properly with one of those. You don't have to go directly to them. You can just take care of it all when you sign up your music for distribution. On the mechanical royalty side of things, we'll also collect that for you. In the US, there's now something called the MLC, and Kevin had an interview with the director of that organization, what,
I
a
was
month or 2
talking to
ago?
them. Yeah, I was talking to them yesterday. They're here in
Oh.
Nashville. They're based
Oh,
here in
okay.
Nashville.
Yeah, so, they have been sort of sanctioned to collect mechanical royalties, from streaming platforms and stuff in the US, but if you use CD Baby Pro Publishing, we've got you covered there too. You don't and shouldn't go directly to the MLC because 'cause we've already taken care of it. And then the other benefit to using CD Baby Pro Publishing in terms of mechanicals is that it also is global, so we're collecting that from all around the world.
Yeah, and when you're talking about all this publishing stuff, one of the main things that artists totally miss that hinders their monetization, especially for performance royalties, because they'll go sign up at a PRO and they never list the songs with the PROs. But
Oh,
we
right, yeah, they're just affiliated as a writer, but no catalog.
yeah, but we take care of all of that with CD Baby Pro. But if you're not using CD Baby Pro, or if you're slumming it with some other distributor that doesn't offer that service, just go make sure your PRO has your songs listed, because they can't magically figure that out.
Yeah, yeah, they're
But
not
I've talked to
psychically scanning the world for
yeah, I've talked to so many artists where that was the case, where they're like, I'm just not getting any money from them. And have you listed your songs? Because you got to affiliate as a writer, but then you got to tell them what songs you own. So
they should know,
yeah,
man. They should be
they should
following my
know.
career.
They should know.
The next bucket of stuff we can talk about is video and sync, and I guess, maybe it's worth starting with sync first because that term, means basically the synchronization of music with moving pictures. So video, commercials, TV, film that uses a sound recording and a composition, because basically the composition is in the sound recording in a way. So when someone wants to use your song or recording in their video, they need to license both the sound recording and the composition rights. So there's a publishing royalty and a sound recording royalty with any sync placement. And that is something CD Baby also can take care of for you. We have a huge music licensing effort, and we've licensed songs to all the big streaming platforms and major networks and a lot of big films. So
Yeah, I think why it's so important to call this out separately is because the strategy and the motivation, both by you as the artist and the person that needs the music, is very different than how we engage when we're trying to promote our music just to consumers and music fans. These opportunities are all about what the production needs, not how cool your music is, how popular it is.
How
That,
new it is doesn't
yeah, how
really
new it
matter.
is. Those can have an influence, but when I was doing sync licensing and just trying to get placements for CD Baby, then just trying to get placements for my band and working with different sync companies, none of them ever said, "How big is your following?" It's whether or not they like the track and could see it being a part of a TV commercial or being in a TV show or being a part of a game. And there's very specific things that happen in those cases. So for going after this type of monetization, you have to understand that this is a different scenario. If you approach it like you approach a playlister trying to get added to a playlist, or as if music supervisors are fans, or like you might approach a club booker, totally different world. I was thinking, Chris, in the last episode when we were talking about cover songs, we mentioned covers on YouTube, and a lot of things that work there are things that are maybe you're a virtuoso on an instrument, or do this interesting sound, and part of the experience is hearing your interesting version of these cover songs. That can play in here for sync monetization as well, because oftentimes what we get at CD Baby is people looking for well-known songs, but they want a different, unique version of it. Or
That's what happened with that Coldplay song that ended up in The Handmaid's Tale. I forget the artist name. A female artist we work with did a Coldplay cover, and it was in this huge, like, climactic finale scene in a Handmaid's Tale episode. It was really cool, but exactly that situation. Hey, we need a unique cover.
yeah, that one of the biggest placements I got for an artist when I was doing that for CD Baby. It was in a movie. It was Marley and Me was the movie, and it was a very moody, vibey, acoustic cover of a Nirvana song. I forget which one, and it just fit the scene really well. And I think that's probably something that everyone's seen a lot, whether it's in a movie. Oftentimes you hear a piano version, like the Pixies, that the piano version of their
Oh, of
song.
Where Is My Mind?
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
that used in so many different things. I've heard like cello versions of it. I've heard piano versions of it. The piano version was used a ton in that somewhat disappointing show that Damon Lindelof did, The Leftovers, I
Oh,
think is what it was called.
Leftovers, right?
Yeah, that song got the piano version of that. It really made the scene. So, as an artist, when you're thinking about opportunities for driving revenue for your music, maybe it's just like, hey, just start building a catalog of these interesting versions of cover songs, songs that you've heard a lot show up in TV and film. It's going to be different than the thing of like what we talked about in last episode about like putting together a live performance of covers, or maybe your strategy on YouTube. It's going to be different, but that's something that can drive revenue for you as well, that probably doesn't take a whole lot of work.
Yeah, and the other side of this bucket we should talk about is social video, because
Hmm.
in a way I see it as this really interesting new form of revenue, but it's really not new. It's essentially like a sync royalty, but instead of looking like a sync placement, it almost looks more like a download or a stream or something. So it's this blending of on-demand music royalty payments and sync licensing, but essentially it's a sync. If you have a song used in a TikTok clip and it's 10 seconds long and it goes viral, those are all like micro syncs or whatever you'd call it. But I think that is certainly a world in which, like, how new and how cool something is can have a big effect in how viral it goes. But the same thing applies in the general sync sense, that let's say you have a 15-year-old song that has this 10-second hook that is just perfect for something on TikTok. It has every bit of chances going viral as something new. So I think the same sense of possibility is open in social video as well. And then it's kind of just a matter of how the specific platforms decide to break down those payments. Like YouTube, they have a very robust content ID system that's going to be paying in a very detailed usage based way. Other social platforms pay more on like I think they call it a creation event. Like, once someone uses your video, that's what you get paid for, as opposed to, consumption.
Yeah. There was an interesting panel here at Music Biz. I wasn't able to attend it because I had something, a conflict happening at the same time, that was about if one of your catalog songs, like meaning not your latest release, goes viral. Like how to handle that. What are the unique things with it? And to me, I was seeing that and
I
just
like sorry to interrupt. I like that you frame that like how to handle that as if it's the bad thing that you have to brace for. Oh no.
I'm Chris. Chris, every day I wake up, today's gonna be the day. That catalog song's gonna go viral. I can feel it.
Do it.
Today's the day. But I think that from the description, and I really was bummed I couldn't go to that one because I wanted to see you see the conversation. We're talking about monetization. It's not specifically a monetization source or revenue source, but it's a mindset that we get into as artists and labels and managers who might be listening, that only the latest release matters. And we are in a world where that is absolutely false, more so than ever. Last night, I had dinner with some folks from Spotify, and we were talking about how it's fascinating how music consumption has changed from one of the people I was talking to, uh, similar age to me, and how our kids don't go about music consumption anyway or anywhere close to how we did. It's not about what's the latest release. It's not about getting the music that came out this week. It's like it's all new and interesting to them because they have access to the entire world's library of music all at once. And so it's a journey that goes in all sorts of directions. And I think we've been programmed to think about all the only thing that has opportunity is my latest release, my latest song, the last hit song. But you've got a whole catalog. You got to be thinking about these things for your whole catalog.
Yeah, that just reminded me of my daughter was listening to this Ariana Grande song, and I assumed just based on who that artist is that it's new. Because to me, in my lifespan, I consider her a new pop artist, even though she's
Yeah.
been around for 10 years or whatever. And I just assumed it was a song that came out last week. And when I looked at it, it came out in 2012, I think. It was one of her earliest hits. And so it might not exactly be what you're talking about with catalog listening, but I was like, oh, cool. My daughter's like digging back into the catalog in her own particular way, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think for us as artists and especially people that have been doing music for a while, we've been trained so much and the industry used to work that way and still does to some degree. But you have to think about opportunities for your whole catalog, whether there's something happening in current events that you have a song that, oh, that matches, that talks about or speaks to this or fits that vibe. Thinking about your whole catalog is still being fresh and new, especially because if if I look at our catalog, even with the amount of streams or sales we've had over time, still 99.999% of the world has never heard us. And
Right.
to all of them, we're brand new and it's all fresh and exciting.
And
Hopefully
I think we can
exciting.
safely say that for all of our listeners too. Not because
Yes.
you're not great, but because we're still unknowns to most of the world.
Well, even some of the biggest artists, most of the planet still doesn't know who they are.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one of those things to keep in mind. So live, this might be the one area where some of the things from that list fall in the live category, whether it's performing live or monetizing that experience. This is probably the area that most artists are most familiar with, but still mistakes are made, opportunities missed.
Well, it's weird because it's one in which we're probably all the most familiar if we play live, and yet it's one
Yeah.
where we feel the most awkward because it's not standardized. Like if you get a stream, you're not choosing how much that you don't have to argue with Spotify about what that payment is worth. But when you enter the live world, like whether you're negotiating with a talent buyer or you're simply just trying to drive people to the venue, there's always like some strange wiggle room in how value is determined in a live setting. So, yeah, again, it's like could be ticket sales, could be door charge, could be you forego that and you just get a percentage of the bar revenue. It always feels not quite standardized, which makes it awkward because we don't like talking about money. But no matter how you go about that, I also wanted to remind people that you are owed publishing royalties if you're playing your own original music in a live
Yes.
venue. So don't forget to go back to ASCAP, BMI, whoever you're affiliated with, and file your set lists because that's additional money that's not being paid the night of the show to you by the venue, but the venue should be paying their what do you call it? Their blanket license
License. Yeah.
fees, which should come back to you. So just make sure to file your set lists and hopefully the venue doesn't hate you. Because if they're not paying that license, you may be ratting them out.
Yes, that was like, I think this program's really just to out all the venues, not to pay the artists.
Well, the good news is I got an extra $8 for that gig. The bad news is I'll never play there again, and they're out of business, so neither will anyone else.
Yeah, I know ASCAP and BMI have portals. I'm sure wherever you are in the world, check in with your PRO. This is something that you file with them. I know in the past we talked about making a portal where people could do it in their CD Baby account and we'd pass it along. I don't know if that's still something we have planned for the future, if there's a reason why we didn't do it. But yeah, from what I've heard, it ends up being about $10 per show, which some people may say $10, that's hardly worth my time. But if you're on tour playing the same set list every night and you maybe play 20 or 30 shows, that starts to add up. And that's money that's owed to you. And so let them know that
Eh,
your music's being used.
Yeah, and not only is it owed to you, but it's the type of thing where if the venue is doing what they should and paying those fees, if you don't collect it, it's just going to go to people who didn't play in that venue for songs that
Yeah.
didn't get, it'll go to the giant publisher songwriters of the day. So just claim what's yours.
I think also that conversation we had with Jeff Toohey, which I think is episode 295 or something, where, talking to it, he's a talent buyer. And we dive into the money thing and the money issue. And I feel like a lot of artists lack confidence in this area, ultimately just want the gig no matter what the financial situation is, or lack the experience to know what options are or what levers or bargaining chips they hold and what levers they can pull, and really understanding the needs and interest of the venue that they're playing at, because those change, they're not all the same, and the money making opportunities will change and how the revenue works based on a lot of those circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one good thing to remember. It's a kind of a moving target every time. Like if you have a crazy packed show and everyone's buying a lot at the bar, but you don't feel like you got your guarantee for that night, maybe you outperformed the guarantee. Well, that gives you leverage for next time to ask for twice as much or something. Similarly, if you've got a guarantee and no one showed up, like you have the option to say to the venue, hey, you know what? I kind of failed this night. Why don't I only take half of this amount? I don't know if you should do that necessarily, but it is a gesture you can make to make sure you don't burn a bridge just because you had one bad night.
Yeah, I mean, you could be flexible, and a club booker or a venue booker or a talent buyer, they know that sometimes you get the best band and everything just doesn't work in your favor. It could be that a lot of things outside of your control, whether it be weather or a freak snowstorm, all sorts of things that could impact it. But being flexible. The other thing I think with club bookers that artists don't do that hurts their revenue making opportunities is they don't ask good questions. Like, what is a typical deal that you're doing with artists? Here's where we're at. What would be your go-to deal? What are the options for us to earn more money? What are the things you look for? Just being upfront with those conversations. I know it can be hard. And oftentimes I know it's challenging because it feels like we're just trying to grab these people's attention with just the bare minimum facts in order to get the date booked and then
Right.
going into this big discussion. But I recommend, if you have a show, whether it goes great or it's okay, if the booker is at the gig or still at the venue, go talk to them then. After the show, if it's great success, that's a great time to go talk to them and get another show booked and ask for more money and increase that revenue stream. During the day, if you're sound checking and they're still there, like doing stuff, just introducing yourself. And maybe that's the time to have the conversation about monetization options and different packages they may put together, or they may know about the other venues in the scene as well and can give you some advice.
Yeah. Our next two categories for me bleed together. So I just want to mention them both at the same time. And then if you
Okay.
want to dissect them, you can. But so the first one was merch and different kinds of media that you can be selling as merch. And then the next thing was experiences and subscriptions. And the reason why I feel like they all bleed together is because essentially what you're doing is selling something or asking for money, whether it's in the form of crowdfunding or, hey, buy my vinyl record, or come backstage after the show, but that's going to cost you 100 extra dollars, whatever it is, you're asking for money. And I think the real conversation needs to be, is it worth it? Have you built an experience or an emotional connection or sense of mystery, something that is additional to what you're asking for them to acquire, to make that acquisition mean something, which for me is why it all bleeds together. Is I think this all comes back to telling a story, making a connection, sort of knowing something very true about your own artistry and why anyone else would give a damn. What
Yeah.
does it say about them that they like you? And if you can figure that out, I think it bleeds into all these different possibilities of how you're making money.
Yeah, and I think the majority of both these segments, the merch and media and experience and subscriptions, are mostly left up to your creativity and imagination and willingness to try things. Some of the media stuff can play into distribution, but most of it is just you getting creative and trying different things. That's what was great about that Adam Ezra episode of the podcast, that making over $200,000 in 2021 just from their band website. And that was mostly broke down into ticket sales. Merch was one of the buckets.
Well, he was like selling cruise experience, going on a cruise with him,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And he had his weekend hotel retreat. He had all
How do you
kinds of
get
good
that
stuff.
gig? How do I get to the point where people want to pay to go on a cruise with me?
You play amazing shows every day for 10 years.
We've made amazing podcasts for we need to have a DIY musician
DIY musician cruise. There we go.
cruise. Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
2023. Some other things to throw in this, like, like the NFTs, essentially, it's just kind of a new form of merch or collectible. And I even think something like live streaming tipping we mentioned, like throwing someone some money on Twitch or using Facebook stars or something like that.
Yeah.
Essentially monetizing an experience. Maybe there's overlap with live shows, but all of it just gets back to that sense of like, what are you doing to make this feel special?
Yeah. And YouTube just rolled out their version of Facebook stars. I forget what it's called. I don't know if it's available to uh, everyone. It would be only available, I think, to partners, like YouTube partners. So your channel has to meet certain thresholds to qualify. And I think that feature just got unlocked for everybody. You might see it if you're following a big YouTuber. It'll just populate under the video next to like the thumbs up and the share button. There's this new button. One thing on merch and media. This is one of those things that I know for a lot of independent artists can be frustrating because there can be such a huge upfront cost. That's why I love Printful, and there's an integration with Bandzoogle,
Bandzoogle.
so you can sell merch that's print on demand from your band website. You never have to do any upfront cost. And the beauty of this is not just the fact that, you know, I don't have upfront costs, because obviously you're going to make a lot less per shirt, but it allows you to try things and see what your fans might be willing to buy, so you don't get stuck with 1,000 mugs in your basement knowing that you're never going to sell them because your fans have shown that they hate mugs for whatever reason.
It's funny you use that example because the mugs are the thing that I feel like I sell the most of from
Really? I
Printful. I'm
didn't
like,
try
wow,
one then.
my fans drink a lot of coffee, or they just drop a lot of mugs. I don't know.
They're just clumsy. Like, dang it,
Clumsy,
I
yeah.
broke that Robley mug again. I know it's a blocker for a lot of artists, and a lot of reasons why they're not monetizing. They're like, I'm not playing enough to justify buying 500 shirts, which is the minimum. Go do this. They've got an amazing catalog of all sorts of stuff that you can try. And if you find out you've got a hit t-shirt with your fans, like they're really loving this one t-shirt, then you can go print them up, and if you want to, and make more money per shirt. But that way, doing this, you're not locked into it. You can try things and you can see what revenue is going to work. Because I know that for me, that was always a major blocker for merch for many years. And the other thing with media, many of you are under monetized because you still don't get CDs made. I know some genres, maybe not, but it's still something to have a few on hand. Right now, you can get amazing deals for just 50 CDs or 100 CDs. Again, it's affordable enough where you can try it out and you're not stuck with boxes and boxes of CDs in your basement, like some of us listening to this podcast and making this podcast have. And so you can try it out, and if they move units or it's useful or it's becoming a thing at the merch table that people are still responding to, then you can go buy a bigger quantity and make more money price per unit. But that's some of those things that people aren't monetizing, is all forms of media that people might consume. So even just start with surveying your fans, ask some questions. There may be things that they would be willing to buy you haven't tried yet.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you go to duplication.cdbaby.com, you can actually do the quote tool and play with different variables like, oh, what would it cost me to get 50 CDs if I had a booklet? Oh, okay, maybe that's more than I want to spend. What about a jacket? Oh, I can afford that. And what about a digipack? So you can kind of keep adjusting the variables, which I always find is fun to just see what kind of packaging you can dream up within your budget.
The last thing I really wanted to highlight with merch and media, and this can play into experiences as well, is that this is where you should be thinking outside of the box. And this is why I love my Bandzoogle website, because we get so trained that this platform has streaming. So I guess that's how fans will interact with music, or this platform has downloads. So I guess that's how they got to interact with it, like the traditional way we've seen downloads by album or track. But think outside that box. Like, I put together a digital box set of rarities that had demos and like the progression of various songs. I put it all into a zip file. It had a lot of cool stuff in there if you were a big fan of our band that you'd never heard before. And I sold that. So it's not, when we say downloads, don't think about, oh, it's the album or it's a single. Think outside the box. A download could be anything. So that's a great opportunity for you as well. Also, think about things that can be downloaded digitally, but that could provide value, like a PDF, like a songbook, like a lyric book. Things that are easy to make, don't cost you a lot of money, but can be an added revenue stream. And for some of you, depending on the kind of music you do, there might be a strong appetite for sheet music. And a lot of the recording software these days will auto generate that for you, especially if you play keyboards or MIDI instruments. And it makes it easy to just crank it out, and you can price it at $1, or you can
Right.
experiment with pricing as well. That's what's the beauty of this as well. You're not locked into price points that have been set, and experiences that are like, oh, a download is an album or a single and it's 99 cents or $9. It's like, no, I can make it whatever I want. I made a zip file of our entire music catalog and was selling it for $50. Those are things you can do by thinking outside the box, that service your fans in a way that they're not getting from the marketplace.
This made me think of Christina, who's on our team and occasionally been on the podcast. This isn't really a merch thing, but it's thinking outside the box on a listening experience. She recently put this post out on social that was like, artists spend so much time sequencing their albums from start to finish, and it tells a story. I wanted to know what it would be like listening in reverse. And so there's a Spotify playlist where it's in the opposite order. And for the ad or the social post, the music actually played backwards. But I found that just intriguing to just be like, oh, I'll go to this Spotify playlist and listen to the songs in the reverse order just to see. So I like that. It was playful, kind of puts the same music in a different context, which was cool.
Yeah.
But to stay on track here, you said that print on demand, there's no out of pocket costs. And that is true if you're doing your own design work. If not,
Yes, true.
then you got to pay a designer. But that leads to our last thing, which I had as other, but really I should say something like monetizing your skills, because you could be selling courses, you could be doing freelance work for other people. It could be you're a great mixing engineer. Normally you mix your own stuff, but you've got friends, bands, and you could charge them session work, anything like that. So I just feel like it's worth remembering that as artists, we also build a number of skills to support our own artistry that we could charge other people to offer for theirs.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
design is
Exactly.
one of them, assuming you don't have to pay another designer.
Yeah, and there's a lot of artists that have design skills and could easily help other artists, especially when you understand what artists need from design. Because when you go find a designer, if they haven't worked with artists before, sometimes you have to spend a lot of time educating them about, as an artist, these are the things that I need. These are the formats I need to use it in. And so if you
No, my album cover shouldn't look like a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Uh, I'm sure somebody's tried. So yeah, those are great opportunities to help artists and engage with the community of musicians around you or online. And typically when you start building that community, everyone benefits. We did skip over subscriptions, and we didn't really dive into that one when we mentioned it, but the one thing I'd highlight there is that one's not one I would say you should start with. It is something that you need to make sure you're delivering value to your fans and make sure that you are equipped to deliver on whatever they're subscribing to month after month. So to me, it's similar to like how we started this podcast. We mentioned in the 300th episode, we went to a pizza place on our lunch break and wrote out 10 episodes to make sure that we didn't pod fade and disappear really quickly. I feel like if you're going to do subscription stuff, really investigate what other artists are doing to keep their fans engaged and feeling like they're getting value for their money, and check out various platforms because they all have different abilities. I know Bandcamp has subscriptions, Bandzoogle has subscriptions. Patreon is obviously a big one because I've talked to several artists recently where they started doing it and realized, oh, I got 2 subscribers and now I don't even know why they subscribe because I don't give anything to them. And so it can be a great revenue source, but you got to make sure that you're equipped to fulfill on those things.
Yeah, and as someone who is subscribed to, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different artists' Patreons, I do start to get the sense we only have so much time in our day as artists. And if we make a good video, aren't you going to just put it out into the world for everyone to see? You're really going to be like, not stingy is the wrong term, but are you going to hoard it so that it's only for your subscribers? Maybe you do. And then that effort you put into that can't help you build your audience outside your subscribers. Then the other thing that happens is, oh, you get to see it first. Okay, cool. Well, I can wait a week to see your video. Like if I'm going to see it on Instagram a week later, I'm too busy to care about seeing it right now, which always starts making me feel like I don't need this. I should unsubscribe from these things because I'm wasting money on Patreon, which isn't a good feeling. I'm lazy enough that I haven't unsubscribed, but it's just
And
things to
then
consider.
you're gonna feel guilt for you're destroying this artist revenue stream.
Right. My $5 or whatever it is. All that to just reinforce the point you're making. I think it has to be well thought out. I think it should be sort of exclusive content or exclusive access if you have the time to do that well. Don't do exclusive content if it's just tossed off and scattered and not interesting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Patreon, they got the word from being a patron of the arts. And the real concept going back is, way back in music history when like rich aristocrats would have an in-house musician that they paid in order to create music. You can have a subscription situation where the fact is these people are just investing in you to keep making music. You don't necessarily have to do all these gimmicky things month by month. I think you just need to clarify what value they're getting. It could be just a means of support. Hey, if you want to see us keep making music, if you subscribe at $5 a month, that'll help us keep this thing rolling. And I think that's okay. I think we feel pressure to do this thing, and like similar with crowdfunding, where you're doing all this extra work and such to justify getting their money when you're like, no, the justification is I'm going to make another record that you want.
Right.
That's the justification. Not that I'm going to go become some circus act now because I have to do this song and dance to keep you happy for your money. That's not the idea. So I think just making
Yeah.
sure you clarify that.
Well, I forget where y'all ended up on you were considering doing another crowdfunding, and my recommendation was one reward. Whether you
Well,
give $10 or $10,000, you're only gonna get whatever it is, the
yeah.
CD or like keep it simple and streamlined.
No, how about this? A crowdfunding platform where someone inputs their annual income and then we decide what their unit of purchase will be in order to support our band, just to make it more equitable.
It's a means-based crowdfunding. I
Yes.
like that. But you determine, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it's not you. You decide what to pay. I decide what you're gonna pay.
I love that.
But one thing I did see was a crowdfunding campaign I saw by another artist where a lot of the different tiers were very similar. It was like album, download, shirt, whatever, the typical. But then it started to be like, oh, you'll get a half-hour hang with the band. Wasn't a concert, it was like a Zoom call or something. So I thought, okay, that's an interesting thing for us to think outside the box with experiences as well. Because yes, I'm sure every fan that loves you would love a private concert at their house, but they might just want to chit chat and ask questions about the songs, and it's an opportunity for you to get to know them and build that connection. So with some of these experiences, don't feel like it has to be a live stream or a performance. It can be other things that are just experiential. They're not, it
Mhm.
can be a hang. So that
Yeah.
made me think, okay, because part of the thing with crowdfunding for us, why, since we're all over the country, some of the easy go-tos are we're going to do a show here and you get free access or whatever, but or we'll do a live stream, exclusive live stream. But if it's just, hey, you'll get to hang out with the band online and we'll chat about whatever you want to talk about. That can be easy to pull off and add value. And for us as artists, oftentimes we don't see that as valuable because we're the artists. We're like, who want to talk to me? But
Well, yeah, no, it's a good point because it's like that particular reward is like very personal, but also scalable. Like you could do that often enough to enough people that it's not draining. And it reminds me of that show Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me on
yes,
NPR. I'm always kind of blown away that all the people who call in, like they don't get anything. There's no prize really. The prize is if you win, one of us will leave a message on your voicemail or we'll record your outgoing voicemail message, which takes them 10 seconds. It's really low, low cost prize, but it's still fun and personal. I don't know why I'm amazed by that every time. And I'm like, oh
that
yeah,
that is
they
true.
just love this show and the idea of Carl Castle's voice or whatever on yeah. So this is like the crowdfunding version of that.
Yeah. What Chris is really saying is for $50, he will call your phone and leave a
For 10
message
seconds.
for 10 seconds that you can use however you please. No, that's that platform Cameo. That's basically what it is. It's like experiences that you create, and oftentimes it's just a phone call. It's like a 10-minute call. A lot of reality show stars do that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, Probably because they don't have a lot of other talents, maybe, but I kid, I kid, I kid.
I am sensing that the DIY Musician podcast is slowly going to morph into how reality stars should market themselves podcast.
Anyway, I think that was a pretty exhaustive list. My hot take is this: every artist has opportunity to monetize themselves better. We just went through a giant list in this episode, but every artist has opportunity to monetize themselves better. So stop focusing all your attention and complaining about streaming services and all that, and start getting creative and monetizing your fans and looking for other opportunities to make money from your music, because we just listed an enormous amount of opportunities, and streaming revenue was just one of them. And so if you're spending all your time complaining about streaming revenue and not being proactive to monetize your fans, you are missing out. So I encourage you, go do something today proactive to monetize your music more, to move your career forward and start making that money. So there you have it.
Yeah,
My
well,
hot
the good
take.
news is that all of those other forms of revenue you could be generating are both more creative, so they're more fun to come up with, and they're more lucrative as
Yep.
compared to that thin slice of the thing we kind of glossed over quickly. So get
Yeah,
creative.
they're all in your control, and there's so many amazing tools now. I guess that's one of my biggest frustrations when I hear artists complain and haven't been proactive in other ways, because it's okay to complain. You got to let it out sometime. But the idea about being proactive, and there's so much that is in your control now. I know around the time I started at CD Baby, I went through all these hoops to get this friend of mine who was a developer to actually be able to sell downloads from my band's website at that time. And it was a pain in the butt. It was expensive. There was two different services I had to have monthly fees in order to use. And it's like, this is too much. All those tools are available now, in most cases free for artists. So take advantage of them and monetize your music, drive that revenue stream, and keep building your career. And if you're doing it, I want to hear about it. So if you've been doing something that's working for you, let us know. Call our listener line at 360-524-2209 or email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. I want to hear about your revenue ideas, the things that are working, things that you've tried that didn't work. And if you've got a song you want to release, head over to cdbaby.com. Get that song out. If you didn't hear episode 301 about covers, go listen to it. It's a good one. Lots of people building audiences with cover songs. And we've got a good two-parter podcast episode coming up. So I'm looking forward to that one. It's going to be a good one about marketing.
Yes. Many
right.
good episodes on the way.
Yep.
All right.
All right. We will catch you next time.
See ya.